The government is still set to propose other difficult reforms to disability benefits, like tightening the criteria for new claimants, alongside measures to make it easier for people on benefits to get back into work.
So, Carl, the government's still likely to be proposing things that many of its own MPs will be very unhappy with.
Yeah, because this is one of the most difficult things in the government's in-tray. Sickness and disability benefits were costing us about £40 billion a year before the pandemic. By the end of this decade, we're looking at something like £100 billion a year. Now, there's disagreement about why that huge increase is happening. Increasingly, it's young people who are qualifying. Increasingly, it's because of mental health conditions. In fact, somewhat controversially today, Wes Streeting suggested that doctors were over-diagnosing mental health conditions. Campaigners will argue that it's actually because mental health services and treatments are under-resourced. But one thing that everyone can agree on is that this kind of huge increase is...
In the months leading up to the controversy, Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor of the Labour Party, stood firm, ready to defend a new policy designed to address the nation's financial challenges. The plan was straightforward: freeze personal independence payments, pipe a vital benefit for millions of disabled individuals in the UK, in order to recover a significant £5 billion sterling from the welfare budget. The reasoning behind the proposal was that the welfare system had become increasingly unsustainable, and Labour needed to take tough measures to demonstrate fiscal responsibility. As a key figure in Labour's economic strategy, Reeves presented the move as an essential step towards long-term financial stability. With her trademark confidence, she assured the public that the decision wasn't made lightly, but was a strategic effort to restore balance to the country's finances. However, behind the scenes, Labour's leadership was already bracing for potential backlash. While Starmer's team had anticipated some opposition, they were caught off guard by the intensity of the reaction. What was intended to be a calculated, low-key policy adjustment quickly ignited a political firestorm, one that threatened not only to derail Labour's economic agenda, but also to fracture the unity of its leadership.
Talk, James, first of all about this benefits cut situation, which we're going to hear more of at about lunchtime today.
Well, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves war on the British people in order to protect the wealth of the super-rich continues today, picking on sick and disabled people.
But James, could I ask you why? Could I ask you
why are they doing it?
Yeah, bear in mind, I mean, this really puzzles me. This is a socialist government.
No, it's not.
What are they then? Because they're the Labour Party. They're supposed to represent the working man, the working person.
They're supposed to, but I think Health Secretary and darling of Keir Starmer's Labour Party, Wes Streeting, summed it up pretty well in Parliament the other day when he listed a whole series of unpleasant anti-people things that the government was doing, and then goaded the Tories saying, you wanted to do these things, but we're really doing it.
As the details of the proposed disability benefit freeze began to emerge, the backlash intensified far more rapidly than anticipated. Immediately, cracks began to appear within Labour's ranks. Left-wing MPs, traditionally the party's champions of social justice, felt deeply betrayed by a move that seemed to target the most vulnerable members of society. Prominent party figures like Angela Rayner and Ed Miliband were quick to condemn the freeze, decrying it as a direct attack on the fundamental values Labour had long stood for. However, the opposition wasn't limited to senior figures. Discontent spread swiftly among backbenchers as well. Many Labour MPs, once strong allies of Starmer, expressed their outrage, accusing the party of abandoning its commitment to protect the disadvantaged. The public's response was equally swift. Disability rights activists flooded the streets, while social media campaigns like Stop the Cuts and Hands Off PEEP gained traction, calling on Labour to backtrack on the policy. As protests grew, the political pressure on the party intensified, turning what was intended to be a subtle policy change into a full-blown rebellion. The party's leadership, once steady, now found itself teetering on the edge, unable to quell the rising storm.
It is in no way a socialist government. It's not one that is pursuing, what you would call basic Labour values. It's one that is continuing cuts and austerity against the majority of people. It's finding ever new ways to pick our pockets. And it's doing all of it because it doesn't want to either break with the militarism that is demanded upon us by the US, or to tax the wealth of the very super rich, who have got hugely richer over the last 15 years. And instead, it's going to drive 700,000 people with disabilities into poverty. That's after cutting the winter fuel allowance for pensioners.
The turmoil within the Labour Party grew rapidly as the backlash against the disability benefit freeze became impossible to ignore. What began as quiet discontent soon turned into open revolt. Left-wing MPs, once staunch supporters of Starmer, were among the first to publicly condemn the policy. They accused him of betraying the core principles of Labour and abandoning its historical commitment to social justice. Angela Rayner, a fierce advocate for vulnerable communities, was quick to denounce the freeze, calling it a reckless and dangerous decision. Ed Miliband, a key figure in the party, also joined the criticism, warning that this move could seriously harm Labour's chances in the next election. But the dissent wasn't confined to the usual critics. Moderate and centrist MPs, who had always been loyal to Starmer, were now expressing their disbelief, with some even threatening to break ranks. The rebellion within the party was gaining strength and threatened to escalate into a full-scale political crisis. Meanwhile, outside of Westminster, the pressure was mounting as disability rights groups flooded social media, sharing heart-wrenching stories of the potential impact the cuts would have on disabled individuals. As the uproar grew louder, Starmer and his team found themselves struggling to contain the damage, unsure of how to handle the storm that was now threatening to engulf the party.
Instead of sitting there sort of ruminating about your situation, how much were they thinking that they might save or get out of making, not freezing, by freezing this payment?
I don't have the exact number, Nana, but I would presume a fair amount, because ultimately you are looking at inflation has risen. So if you were to freeze it, you would be able to save a fair amount, potentially in the billions. And I think that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is going out there and saying that we need to grow the economy for things to improve in this country. But also have a look at what the government's spending. That should be the first step. We need to have something like Elon Musk is doing in the US, maybe not as stringent, but something along those lines that enables us to look where there is waste in government spending, and the welfare bill is the first place they should be looking, because we are spending far too much.
As the political crisis surrounding Labour's disability benefit freeze reached its zenith, the party's response to the situation became a chaotic display of indecision and public backlash. Rachel Reeves, who had once confidently championed the policy, found herself repeatedly challenged in live debates, unable to defend what had quickly become a political disaster. In one particularly charged television appearance, a disabled woman confronted Reeves with a powerful and heartbreaking question: "Do you know what it's like to choose between heating and eating?" The room went silent, and the audience, clearly moved by the woman's plea, burst into applause. Reeves, visibly shaken, attempted to deflect the emotional weight of the moment with her usual political rhetoric, but the damage was already done. Social media exploded with outrage, and the hashtag Labour has abandoned us gained widespread traction, capturing the public's complete disillusionment with the party's actions. Despite the escalating pressure, Reeves remained defiant in interviews, insisting that the freeze was necessary for economic stability. However, her continued defense only fueled further anger. Meanwhile, the Labour leadership, caught between the growing rebellion within the party and an increasingly furious public, struggled to manage the crisis. But it became clear that Labour's reputation had been irreparably damaged.
Starmer started this appeal to Labour MPs last night at a meeting of backbenchers and Labour peers. He had a few tricky questions there. He told them that the welfare system as it works at the moment was indefensible and unfair, but there's clearly a feeling at the top of the Labour machine that reception wasn't good enough in there, and there is trouble ahead, because Keir Starmer is taking the extremely unusual measure of calling in every Labour MP who isn't a minister into number 10 over the next 2 days to try to persuade them face to face that actually they need to back these £5, maybe £6 billion worth of welfare cuts that you were just describing. I reckon he's carved out about 5 hours from his diary, not allowing for prep time to do this. This doesn't happen very often, and I think it's happening because some of these measures, not all of them, but some of them need to be passed in a vote in the House of Commons. And people at the top of the Labour Party think the number of rebels currently, if they were guessing, that could be in their own ranks passing these.
Following the intense backlash, Labour's leadership found itself struggling to deal with the fallout of their decisions. Internal fractures within the party were now in plain view, and the pressure to reverse the disability benefit freeze was mounting. Despite Rachel Reeves' efforts to defend the policy, public opinion shifted drastically, and Labour's once secure position in the polls began to erode. In a desperate bid to salvage some semblance of credibility, Starmer and his team began subtly altering the narrative. Instead of openly admitting defeat, they released a carefully crafted statement, suggesting the policy might be reviewed, signaling a potential retreat. However, the damage was already too significant. The public saw the shift not as a display of strong leadership, but as a humiliating surrender to mounting pressure. Labour's reputation was severely tarnished, with disability rights groups, MPs, and the public demanding more than just a reversal. They wanted a true commitment to safeguarding the most vulnerable. Meanwhile, within the party, whispers of leadership challenges grew louder, with Starmer's authority increasingly questioned. His inability to steer the party through the crisis and maintain control left Labour vulnerable, weakening its chances in the next election and threatening both Starmer's and Reeves' political futures. See you again!